It starts like this. An elderly woman with white hair and hands worn by time enters a chapel in Minas Gerais and kneels before a little-known image of St. Michael. She closes her eyes, whispers a quiet prayer, and suddenly begins to cry, not from sorrow, but from a relief that seemed impossible. What no one knew was that at that exact moment, a doctor in the capital had declared her grandson beyond hope, with no medical options left. But less than an hour after that prayer, the boy was breathing on his own. No medical explanation, no clinical intervention. He was simply breathing. You might think this was coincidence, but when stories like this repeat themselves thousands of times, is it really just chance? There are phenomena that science tries to understand, that the human mind struggles to rationalize, but which touch something beyond, the invisible. Today, I want to show you 3 signs, yes, signs, that are right in front of us, yet so many people choose to ignore them because they challenge what's most comfortable, living without answers. And you'll realize that the spiritual world isn't just a doctrine, it's a reality. And that reality reveals itself in silence, in the in-between moments, in coincidences that are far too precise to be called luck. Let's begin with a case investigated in 1993. A humble woman from rural Bahia claimed to receive messages from heaven. Sounds familiar, right? But what drew attention was what she said during these trance moments. The woman, who could barely read, began to speak about advanced theological concepts, cite writings of saints she had never had access to, and even describe biblical passages in Greek without ever having been exposed to the language. A curious priest recorded these moments and had them analyzed. A group of university professors, initially skeptical, reviewed everything. The result? The audios contained phrases in Koine Greek, a dead language, and the passages were faithful to ancient manuscripts that weren't even translated into Portuguese at the time. How could that be possible? Now this. A recent study by researchers in Germany analyzed 17 cases of people who claimed to have had near-death experiences. You've heard about this before. The heart stops, monitors go flat, but the person comes back, with details they theoretically should never know. One case involved a 28-year-old man declared dead for 11 minutes. When revived, he described in detail conversations between doctors in another room, far from his body. He mentioned tools, dialogue, and even the sound of the elevator as it moved up one floor. Everything confirmed, everything documented. And most astonishing of all, he described being embraced by a luminous presence that didn't say a word. It simply made him feel a love beyond explanation. How can we explain that? And there's more. In a small village in southern Italy, a wooden cross began to release a strong rose fragrance, without a single flower nearby. The local priest requested analysis, suspecting artificial scent. The result? No plausible explanation. The wood contained no oils, essences, or chemicals that could produce the aroma. The cross was on display for 2 years, and every Friday the scent returned. People who walked past would cry, say they felt relief, healing, forgiveness. Some described it as being embraced by something invisible. This isn't cheap mysticism. This is happening, and it deserves attention. These 3 cases reveal a very thin line between what we call spirituality and what we call tangible reality. The question is, are we willing to look deeper into all this? Because if the answer is yes, maybe we'll start realizing that we're surrounded by the invisible far more than we think. Now, maybe you're thinking, but what if these cases have explanations we just haven't discovered yet? That's a fair question. Science evolves, methods improve. But there are moments when even the most skeptical have to stop and admit, we don't know how to explain this. And when humility steps in, the heart begins to listen to what the eyes can't see. Take what happened to Gabriel, a 35-year-old former soldier who lived a strictly rational life. He had no patience for religion, prayers, or stories about angels. He was the type to mock those who believed. Until one day, while driving on a rural highway in Paraná, his car veered off the road and flipped 3 times, landing in a ditch. Help arrived 40 minutes later. What shocked everyone was that he walked away. Not a scratch, not a broken bone, no explanation. But the most curious part was what he shared later. He saw a woman dressed in blue with a serene face place her hand on the steering wheel seconds before the crash. I felt like everything stopped for a moment. I don't know if it was real, but it felt more real than the chair I'm sitting on right now, he said. No camera recorded her. No trace was left behind, but he was never the same again. Stories like this are multiplying. A retired teacher named Irene, who lived alone in rural Alagoas, used to pray every day before an old image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. One rainy night, her house was broken into by 2 armed men. They smashed the door, but once inside the living room, one of them dropped to his knees and began to cry. The other stood frozen, staring at the image. After a few minutes and complete silence, they ran out without taking anything. When the police caught them 2 days later, what shocked everyone was what one of them said during questioning. "We saw a huge man in a white robe with open arms and a light so bright we couldn't even look directly. We couldn't stay inside." No light source was found, no electrical interference, but something happened, and those who were there saw it. Which leads us to a deeper question. Why are so many people around the world reporting similar experiences? Different cultures, different religions, different social backgrounds, and yet they describe the same presence, the same light, the same love. Could we be witnessing a spiritual pattern that keeps trying to reveal itself, even in times of so much noise? I know, maybe you've never seen anything like this. Maybe you think it's all coincidence, exaggeration, or imagination. But let me ask you, have you ever felt something you couldn't explain? Ever walked into a place and felt peace for no reason? Or a sudden tightness in your chest with no apparent cause? These sensations might be more than emotions. They might be signs. Small windows heaven opens for those who dare to notice. And if this video stirred something inside you, if one of these stories reminded you of something you lived or heard, then I want to ask you, subscribe to this channel. Not just to receive videos, subscribe to walk this journey with us as we seek the invisible. Here, every story is a seed, every testimony a spark. And if you feel it in your heart, write in the comments. Have you ever experienced something no one could explain? It doesn't have to be long. Sometimes it's in a single sentence that the miracle someone needs to hear is hidden. And if everything so far still feels distant from your reality, let me tell you one last story that might change the way you look at the invisible. In a small town in the countryside of Mato Grosso, there was an elderly man named Dionisio. A farmer, humble, widowed, he lived alone with his old battery-powered radio and a rosary his wife had left behind. He had never traveled, never read a theological book, and didn't attend church regularly. But every night, exactly at 8 p.m., he sat under a tree and spoke to God like one speaks to a friend. He never asked for anything, he only gave thanks. One day, a young man passing by began to observe that quiet ritual. Curious, he approached and asked, "Do you pray even though no one answers?" Dionisio looked at him with the calm eyes of someone who had already cried enough in life and replied, "Son, I pray because He already answered. My peace is the answer." That stuck with the young man, who years later became a spiritual counselor. He used to say that it was on that wooden bench next to an old man who could barely read that he saw God for the first time, not with his eyes, but with his heart. The world is full of Dionisios, of Gabriels, of Irenes. Ordinary people, invisible to the eyes of the world, yet deeply connected to the mystery of faith. And maybe you're one of them too. Maybe you haven't realized it yet, but the very fact that you're here listening to these stories is already a sign that something inside you is searching. Something silent but strong. Something that can't be explained with words but is recognized deep in the soul. The truth is, miracles are happening every day. Some are spectacular, with lights, scents, healings. Others are discreet, intimate, almost secret. A hug that comes at just the right moment. A song that plays and makes you cry without knowing why. An "I forgive you" spoken by someone you thought you'd lost forever. These miracles won't make headlines, but they are real, and perhaps the most important ones. It doesn't matter if you believe or if you're still trying to believe. What matters is being willing to look inward and realize that spirituality is not just a concept, it's a presence. And that presence is here, right now, while you listen to this video, while the silence gently embraces you from within. You don't need to see with your eyes, you just need to feel. And if this content meant something to you, I want to warmly invite you. Come, be part of this community. Subscribe not as someone clicking a button, but as someone opening a door. Because here we don't collect followers, we welcome stories, we share experiences, and we believe, together, that there is still so much more to see beyond what the eyes can reach. Now, if you want to take the next step, leave a comment. What was the most spiritual moment of your life? It might have been a prayer, a dream, a deep silence, whatever it was. Sharing it might heal someone, might help someone find meaning, or maybe it's the first step toward healing that you yourself needed to take. And if you made it this far, it's because this story touched you in some way. So before you go, take a deep breath and keep this close to your heart. You are not alone. The invisible walks with you. It always has, and now, more than ever, you're beginning to see it.